the family meeting, my brother tried to steal all 11 rentals. I let him dig his own grave. I still remember the exact moment my brother decided to ruin himself. We were sitting in my Aunt Linda's living room, the one with the beige carpet that never quite lost the smell of old coffee and lemon cleaner. Family meetings in our family were never casual. They were battlegrounds dressed up as catching up. Everyone arrived tense, already rehearsing what they wanted to say, what they wanted to take. I arrived calm. That alone should have warned them. My name is Emily Carter, and I was the quiet daughter, the reliable one, the girl who didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't make scenes. Growing up in Ohio, I learned early that silence made people underestimate you, especially men like my brother, Jason. Jason was 3 years older than me and had been loud his entire life. Loud opinions, loud promises, loud failures. And that afternoon, he was about to make the loudest mistake of all. The background they thought I'd forgotten. Our parents had passed within 3 years of each other, Dad from a sudden stroke, Mom from cancer that she hid longer than she should have. What they left behind wasn't just grief. It was 11 rental properties scattered across 3 counties. Nothing fancy, duplexes, small single-family homes, old but solid, the kind of properties that don't make headlines but quietly make money. My parents had built that portfolio brick by brick. Jason liked to tell people he helped Dad with real estate. What he meant was, he once held a flashlight while Dad fixed a water heater. I, on the other hand, handled the books from the time I was 19. When Dad's health declined, I took over collecting rent, paying taxes, dealing with tenants who called at 2 a.m. because a pipe burst. When Mom got sick, I drove her to chemo and balanced QuickBooks in hospital waiting rooms. No one applauded that. They just expected it. Why the meeting was called? Aunt Linda called the meeting to clear the air. That phrase always meant someone wanted something. Jason had moved back into town 6 months earlier after his latest business venture collapsed, something involving crypto, a borrowed truck, and a friend who mysteriously disappeared with the money. Now he was broke. I knew that before he opened his mouth. He sat across from me that day, legs spread wide, arm draped over the back of the couch like he owned the place. His wife, Karen, sat beside him, eyes flicking from face to face, calculating. Uncle Bob, Cousin Mark, Aunt Linda. Even my younger cousin Sophie was there, pretending to scroll her phone while absorbing every word. And me. Quiet smiling, hands folded. The moment he spoke, Jason cleared his throat dramatically. "I think it's time we talked about the rentals," he said. There it was. I felt every eye slide toward me, as if I were the gatekeeper. In many ways, I was. All 11 properties were still legally held in our parents' estate, pending final distribution. Jason leaned forward. "As the eldest," he continued, "and the one Dad always trusted with the big picture, it makes sense that I take over the rentals." I noticed how carefully he avoided looking at me. "I've already been managing them," he added casually. "All 11 rentals are mine to handle now." Mine. The word hung in the air like smoke. Aunt Linda nodded slowly. Uncle Bob scratched his chin. Karen squeezed Jason's knee. No one asked me a single question. I smiled. Not because I was amused. Because I finally understood how far Jason was willing to go. Why I didn't stop him. A younger version of me would have spoken up immediately. She would have corrected him, laid out facts, waved paperwork like a shield. That girl was tired. This version of me had learned something far more powerful. Let them talk. Jason kept going. "I'll make sure Emily gets her fair share," he said magnanimously, as if discussing an allowance. "But someone has to lead. Someone has to make decisions." He finally looked at me then, smug, daring me to contradict him. I met his gaze and said nothing. That silence, it was permission. What Jason didn't know. Jason didn't know that every single property had been refinanced 2 years earlier. with Mom's full consent, to cover her medical bills. He didn't know the loans were structured in a way that tied operational authority to the person managing the accounts. He didn't know that, while the estate was still open, I was the executor. He didn't know that I had kept every receipt, every message, every missed payment he'd ever made when Dad tried to involve him. And most importantly, he didn't know I'd already spoken to a lawyer. The smile everyone misread. When Jason finished his speech, the room was quiet. Aunt Linda turned to me. "Emily, honey, is that okay with you?" I smiled wider. "Of course," I said softly. "If Jason thinks he can handle all 11 rentals, who am I to stop him?" Karen smiled back, victorious. Jason relaxed, already imagining himself landlord king. They thought my smile meant surrender. It didn't. It meant the trap was set. Jason wasted no time, proving exactly why my parents never trusted him with real responsibility. Within a week of that family meeting, he started acting like a king who just claimed a throne he didn't understand. He created a cheap Gmail address, Carter Holdings CEO, and began emailing tenants, banks, and contractors, announcing that he was now in charge. He didn't ask me for access. He assumed I'd hand it over. Instead, I watched. His first mistake, power without knowledge. Jason didn't know the tenants. Didn't know who paid early, who paid late, who needed reminders handled gently instead of aggressively. He sent the same copy and paste message to all 11 properties. Going forward, rent must be paid by the first without exception. Late fees will be strictly enforced. That email alone caused 3 tenants to call me directly, confused, anxious, angry. I reassured them quietly. "Nothing has changed," I said. "Just forward any messages from Jason to me." They did. Every single one. The second mistake, spending money he didn't have. Jason assumed the rental income was free cash. It was. Each property had property taxes, insurance, maintenance reserves, mortgage payments from the refinances. Jason didn't look at any of that. Within a month, he'd put a down payment on a used BMW, paid off Karen's credit cards, taken a weekend trip to Vegas, hired a branding consultant for the rentals. He called me once, annoyed. "Why are the accounts so tight?" he asked. "There should be more money." I kept my voice neutral. "Did you check the expense schedules?" Silence. Then irritation. "You always overcomplicate things, Emily." I smiled to myself after hanging up. The document that sealed his fate. 2 months later, Jason called another family meeting. This time, he brought paperwork. "I need everyone to sign off," he said confidently, "just formalizing things." What he didn't tell them was that the document named him as sole operational manager, assigned full liability for taxes, fines, and debts to the manager, explicitly stated the executor, me, was not responsible for mismanagement. My lawyer had helped draft that clause months earlier, quietly, legally, perfectly. Jason skimmed it. Everyone else trusted him. I signed last. The collapse begins. The first official notice came from the county. Unpaid property taxes. Jason ignored it. Then came the fines for delayed maintenance, leaking roofs, faulty heating units. Contractors he'd promised payment stopped showing up. Then the bank letters started. Late mortgage payments. Penalty fees. Rate adjustments. Jason called me, panicked. "The banks are messing things up," he said. "You need to fix this." "I can't," I replied calmly. "You're in charge now." He hung up on me. When the family turned on him, Aunt Linda called me crying. "Jason says everything is about to be taken," she whispered. "Is that true?" "I'm afraid so," I said. "He hasn't been paying what he should." Uncle Bob stopped answering Jason's calls. Karen started posting vague Facebook quotes about betrayal. And then the IRS letter arrived. Jason hadn't set aside money for taxes. Not once. The ending. How silence became my revenge. The final meeting wasn't in a living room. It was in a lawyer's office. Jason looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. The BMW was gone. Karen sat stiffly beside him, arms crossed. The lawyer laid everything out. Jason was personally liable. The estate was protected. The properties would be reassigned under executor authority. Jason would receive nothing further. Jason turned to me, eyes red. "You let this happen," he said. I nodded. "Yes," I said simply. "I did." Karen stood up and walked out. No drama, no yelling. Just done. Where I ended up. I restructured the rentals properly. Sold 3. Repaired 5. Kept 3 as long-term income. I paid off the medical debt my parents left behind. I built a quiet, stable life. And I learned something important. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles. And lets someone destroy themselves. Final line. Jason tried to steal all 11 rentals. I let him dig his own grave. And then I closed the file.